Hi and welcome to this beautiful day of preparing mung beans and East African chapatis. This dish is very much influenced by the Indians, um, having lived in Uganda and Kenya where I grew up. And this dish is particularly very much in memory of my late mom who used to make it quite often. I'm particularly talking about the mung beans and the chapati. Although the chapati is a very common leavened bread and leavened bread eaten in East Africa throughout most of the Eastern African countries. As we look at what I'm doing, I will also take some time to talk about the cost of living crisis that continues to actually affect many people here in the United Kingdom. Now, it's not news, but it continues to actually rise. Just the other day, my broadband provider increased my broadband from £40 a month, I believe it was, about 41 to 71 a month. And of course, I was straight onto them and onto the phone to actually cut that right back. Here is the pack of mung beans which I bought from Asda, and what I'm going to do here is to actually start by cleaning it, because often, although these packs are cleaned and well prepared, there will be residues in there and broken beans that you do not want to have when you come to cook them. So that's what we do, and typically that is also what I do, or what we do with a lot of pulses that we eat in East Africa and many other African countries. Next off is the other thing I noticed the other day going around and browsing the supermarkets is that the shelves are not as filled as they once used to be, perhaps pre-COVID. Although things changed after the COVID, um, again, there was even a news article that was saying that the UK is increasingly beginning to actually import food from places like, in fact, Africa. Senegal was one of them, I believe. Kenya, Brazil was the other place that food was being imported from. I know food has been coming from Spain as well and other countries. So it looks like it's beginning to be a crisis in that area, and this is part of the reason why I think food prices are going up. It would appear, and it's apparently thought, that UK produces much of its food, but actually um, it looks like as though it's going the other way. There's many reasons for that, which I'm not necessarily going to go deep into, but I believe one of them is to do with lack of seasonal workers as well. Now, the seasonal worker are those people who come into the UK or work from the UK to harvest food during the harvest season, um, to help farmers. Farmers are actually struggling in the UK now to find seasonal workers, and this is also going back to decreasing the number of immigrants coming to the UK. Now, having said that, the UK has also come up with a deal to import into UK um, quite a high number of beef. I mean, a lot of beef. So this has also surprised me significantly. But that is already in the plan, and that's what's going to happen. And of course, when we think about beef, we have to think about animal welfare and what it is that we actually going to be injecting in our systems. Now, British beef is usually has been boasting of its welfare practices for quite a number of years now, and I believe that that is true. So that is quite a little bit of a you know worrying trend, in the sense that the cost of living and the cost of food is going to continue to increase. Now here I've already completed cleaning the bins, and I will be washing them straight from that specific container. Now, as we continue to talk about the cost of living crisis, please do well to subscribe if you like this kind of content, where we talk about a range of matters: parenting, life in the UK, lifestyle vlogs, immigration, and um, more in between. I'll just eat my breakfast there, so excuse me for that. Now, here I also have some bananas, green bananas, but these are called matoke in Uganda and even in Kenya and Tanzania as well. I'm feeling this, but I wasn't going to cook them on this day. I was just going to freeze them to stop them from spoiling. And I do that with a lot of foods, including onions and tomatoes as well. The only thing I find with tomatoes, the last time I froze them whole, was that they contain so much water. Even the onions were quite challenging to cut through because I didn't cut them to smaller pieces, but I just left them whole or cut them in half. You'll see that later in the video. Now, one of the things that we all must continue to do is to actually, which I do, is to continue to search the supermarkets, to search the shops, to search online for deals, to cut our costs continually, because I think that whether we um, have money in abundance or whether we have less money, I think we all probably are and do think about cutting back on the cost, because the truth of the matter is that there are other things to pay for, and it's not just about working to pay bills. If you do have goals and you do have plans for the future, you definitely do want to hold back your money. This is I suppose, really a no-brainer. But you'd be surprised how many of us do not actually look deep into our outgoings. I had to go through some of my outgoings. There are some subscriptions sometimes we add and we forget about them. And I've had some of those. I've had channel subscriptions that I do not watch. I've had Amazon Prime subscriptions that I do not necessarily use. And sometimes you forget about them. Sometimes you go on a trial for something and you forget about it. So I've come to a point where I cannot be going out to earn money and it can't just be leaking. My money must come in and it must go towards something solid. Money must go towards investment and so forth. So that is just a food for thought that I just wanted to actually talk about. The next thing, and some of the things that I strive to do, and potentially we must all strive to do, is to try and buy wholesale. I've not done that on a large scale yet, because I'm looking for adequate storage space, and not only does it potentially save money, but it also potentially saves time, because let's face it, we are extremely busy working, we're extremely busy with other things in our lives, that we running to shop every single week for the same things that can be bought in bulk and put away can become tedious and challenging. Much though I love shopping, I still are looking for ways to cut back on the time that I spend on certain things, so that I can turn my time into some more um, is sort of meaningful things, um, and things that could actually increase me as a person. So yes, that's that. I definitely believe in making much out of the little that one has. And in the changing face of the economy worldwide, I think we all need to constantly be thinking about how to step up on increasing our income, how to step up on saving money, and how to step up on our investments. Now, for those of us who are in the diaspora, who are living in the UK, if we are people who are thinking about um, retiring in back in our countries, then this really is the time um, to actually start putting things in place. Um, I urge people to not think that they are too young to actually start putting investments down. As soon as you're somebody who is an earner, um, think about your future. If you haven't got a pension in place, if you haven't got savings in place, do start that um, plan immediately. I say that because I found myself in the United Kingdom um, being a carer um, to my children. And for many years, I was working self-employed and trying to find an income working from home because it was so challenging to get out because of the special needs involved. And I found myself caught up over the years in trying to actually catch up on some of the plans and goals that I have for the family or for myself. And by God's grace, there is still time. Where there is life, there's hope. So if you're in that situation where you couldn't do anything for years for reasons that were not your fault, they were not things you could control, then I just saying that there is hope for those in that specific circumstance. It's not too late. It is a matter of a mindset. It is a matter of knowing uh, where you want to go, where you want to be, um, perhaps in old age, for instance. Because let's face it, many of us that have been living in the UK for years um, begin to think about the future. UK as an old person, as an elderly person, UK when you're of a certain age, for immigrants, for us Africans, is this really the place where we want to be? Because we know that here they put the elderly in homes, for instance. And if it's not something that we want for ourselves, then we need to start asking God what it is in store for us. What are the things that we need to do and the steps we need to take in order to get to where we'd like to be? So let me just pause there for a minute and talk about these onions, because these onions were whole and they came out of the freezer. I had already peeled them and froze them a week and a half or so ago, but they were becoming difficult and slippery to cut into smaller pieces. So I left them in chunks the way they were. And honestly, um, for that particular dish, it prefers small onions, but I think it doesn't matter because there's what you call a chunky soup. And the mung beans can be eaten as a soup on their own as well, with a range of vegetables. You know how you make soups and just put vegetables in there in whatever shape you cut them because you know they're going to cook. But there are some dishes that you have to cook and cut onions in specific ways. So I had to forgo that and just do it as it was. The tomatoes as well, and that's why water was oozing out of tomatoes and onions when I was cutting them. So do excuse that. I had to tackle them the way they were. Now, earlier on, I spoke about the supermarkets and what's items are dwindling in supermarkets. However, supermarkets are still a great place to shop. Supermarkets in UK, such as um, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Lidl, Aldi, and even the African stores for certain items. Now, the African stores are good for if you want to buy larger quantities and bigger bags of certain items, such as rice, for instance, and of course, African food, the range of them, of which we all know exactly what those are. But if we then turn around and look into some of the supermarkets and also look at their prices for larger bags of rice and some aisles where they sell wild food, uh, you will find that they're slightly cheaper than the African food shop. So, having said that, I was in Asda. Is a good example. A good example of a store I meant Asda's. What I like about Asda is they have larger items, and we don't have a local Asda in my town, so I have to go to the next town, which the nearest is Bexley. And some of these items they have are larger, and it's always better. I said earlier about buying bigger things and bulkier items to actually enable you to have things that you know so you use for some time and you don't go back and forth, and that is actually cheaper that way. Having said that, I don't particularly think that Asda is cheaper for meat products. These are just mainly processed meats. I'm not talking about processed meats, for example, but if those are some of the things that sometimes you tend to buy, then I find that these specific ones are probably cheaper in places like Lidl and Aldi if they have them. And some other items that I like to buy from Asda are some of the range of nuts that they have there that my family like. So on this particular aisle um, is the wild foods section in Asda. This is what I was talking about the pulses. Uh, if you're Asian or if you're East African and you use chapati flour, you can find those at a better price, I think, here than in some of the African shops. I believe even things like cooking oils. As they have a very beautiful and wide range of cooking oils. I'm talking about infused oil, sunflower, vegetable, organic coconut oils, olive oils that are infused and those that are not infused. A very beautiful wide range. And here are the rices that they have. And if it wasn't because um, I didn't come with a car or I didn't have that transport that day, this is probably a good place to actually buy bulky rice. And also the spices. You're looking at spices at £1 for these packs. You're looking at spices for under £1. Whereas if you go to the African stores, you're going to buy them for about £1.50 each and almost £2 as well sometimes. So this is a very wise, shopping, way to do things. It's very advisable to actually, if one goes to just buy them in a bulk. I mean, in bulk, when you go there, some specific things that you say, if you're not near the shops, that is the best thing to do. And believe it or not, even I'm discovering things all the time. It's not that I always knew and know that prices can vary like this, depending on what the items are in different shops. But in UK, we shop in different shops anyway. I don't think one person ever really shops in one shop and says they're getting every single thing from under one supermarket. People go to the markets, stalls, people go to different types of uh, supermarkets, and people use different types of brands and so forth, because we have a variety of need and diversities in the UK, so we can't easily shop in one place. Here they have a range of pulses, as I said earlier. If you're somebody who eats pulses like ourselves, you do have red lentils, a range of lentils. And that was the mung beans that I was buying, which I believe was actually cheaper than buying it in my local African store. So I will continue to do that, and I encourage others to do that as well in terms of shopping. Now that's what I meant by the onions being this way. These onions were filled with water and were um, they really, because what happens is I think then they absorbed full water when I froze them whole. And ordinarily speaking, I'd cut them how you'd chop onions and freeze them after that so that I just pick them and use them. But on this occasion, I had so many of them, I was in a rush, so I didn't do that. But nevertheless, I never mind. It is what it is, and it's still okay. Um, After all, the food is still edible, and there were some chunks there that I had to actually just break down and let them cook for a while. So by this time, the onions had cooked down quite significantly, and I added the tomatoes and just allowed them to cook down a little longer than usual. Now, this dish looks very simple, but I think the preparation that goes into this dish is quite uh, elaborate. Um, by the time you cook the beans and prepare all the ingredients to go with it, of which I was doing on the same day, and because I wanted to show um, how I cooked this favorite dish that my mom, my late mom, showed me, exactly the way she did it. However, having said that, there are things that I did not have, such as coriander. And for this dish, you never ever use canned tomatoes because it spoils it. It's not the same taste. And I also didn't have all-purpose seasoning in the house. However, I did use later on uh, turmeric powder I also missed a powder that I didn't have, which is garam masala. That's also an important one. I used curry powder, and turmeric, salt, and fresh garlic. I did add some garlic granules. However, the ideal thing is to use fresh garlic, which I did use, and very often to actually use plenty of those, because this was a whole pack. And mung beans has a tendency of swelling and becomes quite a lot. Also, not to allow it to overcook unless you really like such textures. The outcome that we had was that salt I'm adding, or I believe it was garlic granules, which again, you can opt out and miss out if you like, and opt out some of the spices. If you do not like a lot of spices, you can still add some salt and one or two other spices, or just leave it at salt if you really like it that way. So that salt looks like a lot again, very often, but I use my eyes in cooking. So that's what you're seeing here. And then I added some hot water from my kettle so that it can continue to cook and cook a little, pick up heat a bit faster. Now, this dish, sometimes in the past, I have tended to boil the mung beans on their own first, but I've moved on to pour the mung beans as they are in the stock of tomatoes and onions and other veg without boiling them, because it really doesn't make any sense. After all, they can become overcooked if you're not careful, and it saves energy this way. So that's what I did. Here are the matoke now ready for freezing, and they will just be ready to cook on another day. It could be in the morning for breakfast. It could be an accompaniment, to other dishes as well. And as we go along, let's see how this continue to cook, and watch along, and don't forget to like and comment and share if you've watched up to now. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all for supporting my channel. Please do support the channel by liking, subscribing, and commenting. I like to hear from you, my subscribers, and let's say, um, what other things, and what other topics you may be interested in on this channel. This channel is evolving, and I will see how God takes me, and with the kind of topics that would talk about. Thank you so much. Now, chapatis do take quite a lot of effort to cook. And honestly speaking, I don't cook them that often. But when we do cook them and I have a chance to cook them, um, I really like to take time and get it right so that we can really, really enjoy it. Some people opt to buy them. Um, if they live in areas where it's accessible, especially places where Indians stay, they do buy them and just add their stews to it. These chapatis can be eaten with a whole range of stews. I'm talking about beans and a range of pulses. I'm talking about meats, um, different types of meat stews, and so forth. They can be eaten for breakfast. They can be eaten as a snack. There's a snack called Rolex in Uganda that's made of eggs, vegetables, and this is a very popular a snack across the range in East Africa. Sorry about that writing there. That was not meant to be there. That was for the matoke. So yes. So it took me a while. By this time, that the dough was cool enough for me to handle. And as you can see, it's really, really soft. It is very, very sticky. So I had to do quite a lot of rolling and adding more and more flour. Now there we are. I haven't shown the entire aspect of preparing the chapati and flattening it, but I did roll it out and add some oil in it and seal it off and then round it up and actually um, before I rolled it out. That gives for a softer consistency, a softer result of the chapati. And there we are with the mung beans served and ready to eat. These chapatis were soft and we really enjoyed them. Thanks so much. Until next